Tonight, we venture into the dark corners of the undead world, where the living are not safe. Our exploration will take us through 4 grisly tales featuring the relentless, horrifying creatures known as zombies. These stories are sure to etch a nightmare into your mind, as each tale is more terrifying than the last. So, get ready, as we guide you through the chilling world of zombies in this video. Number 1. Feast of the Undead. The Feast of the Undead had been the stuff of legends for eons in the fog-shrouded town of Shalebridge. The residents spoke in hushed whispers late into the night, shuddering at the grisly tales of the feast held in the dilapidated mansion atop Shale Hill. It wasn't Halloween or any known ancient ritual that brought catastrophe. It was the feast itself. Though the how and the when couldn't be pinpointed, it was inevitable, and its effects horrifying. The mansion was home to the once prominent McAllister family, but tragedy befell them all. Rumors claim a pact with an entity, an ethereal horror from the beyond, instigated the sudden death of each family member. They were then made to walk the earth in their rotting forms, hosting the abhorrent feast for their insatiable phantom guest. It wasn't until the moon turned blood red that the feast would begin. The eerie light would cast long, monstrous shadows upon the mansion, and an otherworldly howl would permeate the silence. It sounded like a beast starved for countless centuries beckoning its loyal servants. One by one, the undead McAllisters would emerge, their ragged clothes hanging off their decaying bodies, the hollow echo of their footsteps chilling to the bone. They'd gravitate towards the grand dining room with an unearthly hunger in their sunken eyes, drawn by the unseen force. The room, though just as decayed and forgotten as the rest of the mansion, would spring to life. Candles would flicker to life, casting an unsteady glow over the ominously set table. The air would turn cold, so cold one's breath would freeze, and a sickening smell of rotted meat and decaying flora would fill the room. The undead McAllisters, hosts of this grotesque feast, would seat themselves to sup on a bounty of rancid meats and overripe, maggot-ridden fruits. The feast would persist all night, the sounds of their grotesque merriment echoing across Shalebridge. Their laughter was a deathly orchestra of agonizing cries and the scraping of cutlery against bone instead of porcelain. They would toast with goblets filled with a dark, viscous liquid. If one dared to venture too close, they'd surely be overwhelmed by the metallic scent of blood wafting from the goblets. When the first rays of dawn creeped through, the mansion would fall deathly silent. The blood-red moon would fade, and a supernatural wind would snuff out the dancing candle flames. The feast would end, and the undead would retreat to their eternal slumber, leaving behind a harrowing tableau of their macabre banquet. The Feast of the Undead was both a curse for the McAllister family and a chilling harbinger of terror for Shalebridge. It served as a grim reminder that some things are best left undisturbed, and some prayers should never be answered, lest they invite upon themselves a nightmare from which they can never awaken. Number 2. City of the Deadwalkers. The small, isolated town of Marrow Hollow had a lurking, grotesque secret it hid within its murky depths. A desolate expanse of land, ominously titled City of the Deadwalkers, was known only to the few brave souls who dared to venture beyond the comforting familiarity of their quaint homes. The City of the Deadwalkers was more than just an abandoned graveyard. It was a nightmarish territory where the beings of the undead thrived under the haunting moonlight, their ghastly silhouettes skimming the foggy veneer of their decaying kingdom. To the living, the city was an embodiment of their deepest fears, a chilling reminder of their impending doom, made manifest by horrifying undead creatures. Every night under the phantom glow of the moon, these corpses would rise from their murky graves, spurred back to life by a curse shrouded in murky mystery, unspeakable horror, and blood-curdling terror. What was once a common man, a loving mother, or a playful child during the light of day, would morph into hideous creatures under the inky velvet of night, their humanity stripped away, leaving behind only rotten flesh on their skeletal figures. The Deadwalkers roamed the streets of the city without rest, their souls shackled by this monstrous metamorphosis that the darkness swallowed them into. They were the embodiment of an existence trapped between life and death, a horrid illustration of haunting reality laid bare in the brutality of their disfigured forms. One night, a naive young man named Edgar, driven by morbid curiosity, dared to explore the haunted city. Disregarding the fearful warnings whispered in hushed tones, he ventured into the dread-filled arena with nothing but a flashlight and a failing heart. As he ventured deeper into the cursed city, the flickering beams of his flashlight fell upon the decomposing creatures of the night. Their hollow eyes bore into him, their cracked lips moving in a grotesque parody of life. Fear gripping him, Edgar panicked, tripping over a loose cobblestone and injuring himself in the process. It was then the undead were drawn to him, their senses heightened by the fresh scent of his blood. Overpowering his attempts to fend them off, the Deadwalkers launched themselves onto him, their rotten, gnarled fingers digging into his warm flesh. Tongues of fear and terror licked his mind, but before he could utter a scream, he was submerged into a wicked oblivion. That night, Marrow Hollow gained another unwilling citizen in the city of the Deadwalkers. Edgar was no longer a man, no longer a citizen of the living world. Instead, he had become a grotesque part of the undead city's grim tapestry. A chilling reminder to the rest of the town that what lurked in the shadows was much more terrifying than they could ever imagine. Number 3, Rotting Hearts Forever. In the grotesque realm of the undead, the concept of love takes an eerily macabre turn. The ghastly phenomenon known as rotting hearts forever is something that's bound to send chills down the spine of anyone who dares to consider its implications. The tale begins in a once peaceful town that has succumbed to a plague of the undead. Amidst the hordes of walking corpses aimlessly shuffling through the ruins, there was one pair of lifeless eyes which held a glimmer of something vaguely familiar: affection. Two decomposing figures, once known as Harold and Martha, were seen endlessly wandering, their gnarled hands forever entwined. Shreds of their former lives were engraved deep within their deteriorating brains. Both in life and death, they remained inseparable, their connection surviving the very decay of their flesh. Some whispered that the despair and loneliness of being undead had driven them to one another. Others maintained they indeed loved each other in their past life, and the force of their feelings had transcended beyond the grave. Their gruesome journey appeared slightly different from the rest of the shambling undead. They seemed to show a form of instinctive protectiveness for one another, a grotesque distortion of tender love seen in the world of the living. It was as if their shambling, rotting bodies housed spirits desperate to recreate sparks of humanity, stuck in an eternal loop of grotesque affection. Late in moonlit nights, residents hiding in the torn remnants of the town would witness the gruesome sight of Harold and Martha courting each other. Harold might share a piece of raw meat marinated in fresh blood, horrifyingly reminding them of candlelit dinners back when they were alive and human, whereas Martha, in her own chilling way, might make an attempt to hum a ragged tune, the mangled sounds hollow and harrowing, an eerie eulogy to their love. One chilling event sealed their tale in local lore forever. A lone survivor, shivering in fear, made the grave mistake of crossing paths with this undead pair. Recognizing the threat to Martha, Harold flew into a rancid rage, dispatching the poor soul with an intensity and swiftness uncharacteristic of his undead brethren. In such moments, the disgusting reality of their existence was noteworthy. Love, as it was, had endured. Yet it was a love that was tainted with the fetid scent of decay and an underlying current of menacing brutality. A Rotting Heart's bizarre love story brought an unexpected twist to the tales of horror and became an iconic symbol of the town's ghostly nightmare. Just like an ill-fated love story of the living, Rotting Hearts Forever left behind whispers of grotesque devotion that lingered long after the screams and growls of the undead had faded away. Number 4. Sleepless Eternity's Curse. The tale of Sleepless Eternity's Curse unveils an eerie folklore from the small Eastern European town of Kirchhoff. The sun rarely smiled over Kirchhoff. Its gloomy streets were home to tales of terror, especially as the spectral moonlight shadowed the town. The old-timers whispered stories about the town's church, a grotesque testament of the aforementioned curse. Legend uttered about Father Olin, not your average Catholic priest, but an immortal being, ensnared by an ageless fiend, guarding a curse as old as the town itself. Rumor was that on the night of a complete lunar eclipse, strolling echoes of shuffling feet and guttural growls from the church's eerie crypt filled the eerie silence. The village people spoke in hushed tones, reciting the tale of Father Olin, born under a cursed moon, possessed by a demon of an eternal sleeplessness. The fiend, Jakaral, was an entity associated with tormented souls, forcing them into a ceaseless wakefulness. Once a betrayer of boundaries between the living and the dead, Father Olin was assailed by Jakaral as retribution and locked in an undying torpor, neither awake nor asleep, an undead guardian of the curse. One fateful night, a group of devil-may-care teenagers dared to break the sacred rule. Geared by reckless curiosity and the irresistible desire for thrill, they resolved to witness the ashen-faced Father Olin. As the moon started to eclipse, they sneakily tread into the church. Breaking the lock to the crypt was easy, but no one was prepared for the harrowing sight that lay in the ashy light beyond. A silver-haired figure knelt in silent prayer. It was Father Olin himself, his deathly pallor glowing under the celestial glimmer of the eclipse. Horrifyingly, his crimson eyes flickered to life at the teen's intrusion, reflecting an eternal torment, a sleepless hell. Startled, the teenagers stumbled backward as the guttural growls resonated around them. A terrifying sight unfolded as dark, decayed hands reached out from the crypt graves, pulling the authoritarian cloak of reality into a grinding stop. Father Olin hissed in a voice rough like gravel, "You disrupted the sanctum. Jakaral has risen." The blood drained from the teens' faces as the crypt crawled with lifeless bodies, resuscitating with an insatiable hunger for flesh. Terrified screams rang futilely in the cold crypt as the undead fed. Only one got away, a boy of barely 16, his sanity forever marred. The only proof of this gruesome narrative, he remembers the hollow, sleepless eyes of Father Olin at last finding some semblance of peace in the memory of fresh blood. And thus, the tale of the Sleepless Eternity's Curse remains, a cautionary tale for anyone daring the boundaries between the living and the undead. We've journeyed together through eerie cemeteries and faced a slew of undead horrors. So if these tales have sent shudders down your spine, don't forget to give the video a like and subscribe to our channel to join in for more spine-chilling sagas. Remember, there's always a new terrifying tale waiting for you in your nightmares. Keep your nightlight on and your covers tight, because as long as there's darkness, the zombies will stalk. Until next time, sleep well and stay eerily safe. Thank you for watching.